Okay, so, we've been looking at this stuff you sent over about this game, the current, and I gotta say, what really struck me is how it seems to just completely dodge that whole, like, cosmic horror thing where everybody goes crazy,
Yeah.
right? Like, the whole,
Yeah. Yeah.
what happens if instead of breaking you encountering, like, the truly unknown, like,
Mhm.
fundamentally changes who you are?
Yeah, that's really the heart of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and all the source material, and especially this huge rule book we've got for the current, it
Yeah.
really paints this picture of a world that's like soaked in the supernatural, you
Right.
know? It's vast and unknowable, and it doesn't really care about us.
Right.
But it's also kind of presented as this realm of like bizarre wonder, this
Yeah.
like constant undercurrent of, hidden realities and things like that.
Totally. And it's not just like a surface level, like, oh, spooky thing happened,
Right.
The rule book really builds this world like piece by piece.
Yeah.
We've got the core ideas, the philosophy, the mechanics that shape the game, a super detailed setting,
Mm-hmm.
which is Arkham in the 1880s, but like a really specific version of that.
Okay.
And then it's got these super deep factions and figures, and each one kind of hints at all these potential stories,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Then there's the lore and even some built-in frameworks for adventures.
Yeah.
So what we're going to try to do today is pull out the most like interesting and thought-provoking pieces from this rule book for you guys listening.
Yeah.
We want to give you like a fast track to understanding what makes the current unique,
Yeah.
what its main ideas are, and why you might find this particular approach to cosmic horror like really, really grabbing that.
I think we're basically trying to answer the questions that probably popped into your head when you first came across this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is it about the current that's different from other games in this genre?
Yeah.
What are the big ideas that kind of like run through it and shape how you play?
Yeah.
And like at the end of the day, is this a journey into the unknown that speaks to you?
Totally. Okay, so let's dive in. One of the first things that really stood out to me was this idea that mystery is like the main point,
Okay.
not mastery,
Yeah.
right? It's not about getting super powerful so you can control these cosmic horrors. It just feels way more subtle than that.
Yeah, I think what they're doing here is really smart. They're going against that whole power fantasy thing.
Yeah.
And like simplistic solutions. Violence isn't really shown as a way to win in this game. It's more like a desperate act that's going to have consequences that stick with you.
Right.
And instead, they're focusing on how you move through this uncertain territory between what we can understand and this huge, like, void of the unknown.
Right.
And the facilitator in the game is a big part of that. They're not just a game master like in other games. They're more like a guide who helps the story unfold.
Right.
They prompt questions instead of giving all the answers.
Right.
So it's a totally different way of telling these stories.
Yeah. And that philosophy seems to lead right into what they call the philosophy of revelation. This idea that the current itself is like a constant flow of hidden truths.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like this undercurrent of weirdness running beneath everyday reality.
Yeah.
But you can't just tap into it without something happening to you, right?
Absolutely. Revelation from the current always comes at a cost, and they call this weathering.
Right.
And it's not like taking damage in a normal game. It's more like this slow but irreversible kind of erosion of your identity,
Wow.
your certainty, even your basic strengths.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Weathering isn't totally bad.
Okay.
The changes it brings about can actually be kind of unsettling and give you a unique and uncanny presence.
Right.
So wisdom in this game isn't about controlling the unknown because you can't. It's more about having this respectful curiosity
Yeah.
and a kind of courageous humility,
Right.
It reframes how you think about the mysterious.
Yeah, this whole idea of weathering feels like it's woven into the very fabric of the game.
Right?
It's not just a game mechanic. It's the price you pay for knowledge,
Mhm.
a truth that changes your character in big ways over time.
Right.
It really makes you think about the cost of seeking forbidden knowledge and not just like, oh, I lost some health points.
Exactly. It's not like a sudden fall or a random penalty.
Right.
It's this ongoing evolution that players are encouraged to embrace.
Right.
And it shapes how their characters change as they dig deeper into these mysteries.
Right.
And what's interesting is they don't just present it as a curse.
Okay.
It's like a badge you get for being close to the unknown.
Right.
A sign that you've seen something profound.
Right.
They even have this idea of returning instead of dying,
Okay.
which says a lot about how the game looks at mortality and how you're connected to the current even after death.
Right.
It suggests a change that goes beyond just the end of your character.
And they make it very clear that the current isn't some kind of supernatural tool you can just use whenever you want.
Yeah, no. The rule book actually says the current is not a toolbox.
Right.
It's not a resource you use up or a force you can command. It's huge. Basically unknowable and only sometimes reacts to what people try to do.
Right. They have this really cool analogy. They say it's like a fish trying to navigate a strong ocean current.
Right.
You're not using a spell book. You're trying to ride this powerful and unpredictable force.
I like that.
Yeah. And the game mechanics work like that, too. Your supernatural abilities aren't something you use up. They're more like a tide you have to navigate.
Okay.
And every time you try to use them, there be consequences, risks, things you didn't see coming.
Right.
So it really drives home the point that you're dealing with something way beyond your control.
Which brings us back to this idea that maybe some things are better left unknown.
Right. Yeah.
Right? The game seems to leave some gaps in our understanding on purpose.
What they're doing is acknowledging that some things are just ambiguous. Not every mystery is going to have a nice, neat ending, and not every revelation is going to make things perfectly clear.
Right.
The rule book actually says that some questions are meant to stay unanswered.
Okay.
Like a ghost's last words might create more questions than answers.
Right. Or a creature might vanish before you fully understand what it is.
Right.
And they do that on purpose.
Okay.
It's based on the idea that the most haunting truths are the ones that stay unfinished.
Okay.
The ones that keep echoing in the back of your mind.
Right.
It's about embracing the unsettling feeling of not knowing everything.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about how the game actually works. The mechanics.
Okay.
Because the rule book has some really interesting stuff, starting with character creation.
Yeah.
It's not just about min-maxing your stats, is it?
No, it really focuses on the story and your personal history right from the beginning.
Okay.
Your character is defined by their origin, which is like their background and what shaped them.
Okay.
Their attunement, which is this deep connection to a force like fire, water, or shadow.
Okay.
Their strengths and weaknesses, which are more like descriptions than numbers.
Right.
And this is important, their starting level of weathering.
Right.
It's all about showing who this person is and how they've already been touched by the world even before the game really starts. It's designed to immediately give you a character with a past and a connection to the game's themes.
And this attunement thing sounds really important. It's not just a label you slap on, right?
No, it's crucial to how your character interacts with the supernatural part of the world.
Right.
Each attunement, like fire, water, stone, wind, shadow, echo, represents a fundamental connection to the current.
Okay.
And the rule book mentions this really interesting and possibly dangerous thing called inverting your attunement.
Okay.
So if you try to do something that's the opposite of your natural attunement, it makes the effect stronger, but also way riskier.
Oh.
Like say a character who's attuned to water tries to conjure fire.
Yeah.
They're basically forcing the current through the wrong channel.
Wow.
And that could have some seriously unpredictable consequences.
Right.
It really reinforces that whole not a toolbox idea we talked about before.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then you've got blessings and flaws, which seem like these really cool additions to your attunement.
Right.
They add these layers of supernatural quirks and struggles.
Exactly. They're not just normal traits.
Right.
They're more like supernatural inclinations and challenges that are shaped by your connection to the current.
Okay.
So, for example, someone attuned to stone might have this blessing called unyielding resolve,
Okay.
while someone attuned to shadow might struggle with a flaw called not entirely here.
Right.
Like their connection to the physical world is fading.
Wow.
It's all about making your connection to the current feel real and personal.
Yeah.
It shows up as both advantages and disadvantages, which further defines what your character can do in the story.
And the weathering system itself has these really evocative stages.
Yeah, it's not just a number that goes up over time.
Okay.
It's presented as a gradual change.
Yeah.
The rulebook lists 6 stages: frayed, worn, unmoored, eclipsed, becoming, and finally returned.
Okay.
And each stage represents a real shift in how your character exists,
Right.
how they see reality and their basic connection to the world.
Right.
It's not just about losing abilities. It starts with small inconsistencies and slowly gets to a point where your character is more and more intertwined with the current,
Right.
leading to this mysterious return state, which seems like it's beyond normal understanding.
Right. And even the way you roll dice in the game adds to this feeling that nothing is certain.
Absolutely. It uses a D20 system, but the results depend a lot on what's happening in the story and how creative the players are.
Okay.
It's not just about hitting a target number.
Right.
They have different levels of success and failure, and they emphasize that even failing can make the story more interesting or reveal unexpected things.
Yeah.
And if you have a really great success, You might even catch a glimpse of the deeper mysteries of the current.
Oh, wow.
Hints of truths that are beyond normal understanding.
That's cool. And when it comes to fighting and getting hurt, it seems like the current really highlights how fragile life is.
Yeah, it's not a game where you can just shrug off damage.
Right.
The rulebook makes it clear that wounds last and they matter a lot more than just losing hit points. Because they don't actually use traditional hit points in the game.
Okay.
They have this defensive roll you can make to try and avoid getting hurt.
Right.
But if you fail that roll, you get injured.
Right.
And if things are really bad, you could get a critical injury
Right.
where another injury could kill you.
Yeah.
It really shows how dangerous it is to exist in this world.
Right.
And how violence leaves permanent scars, both physically and probably mentally too.
Right.
It makes every fight feel important and like it could change your life.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's talk about the setting, Arkham in the 1880s.
Okay.
A lot of people know Arkham from other cosmic horror stories, but it sounds like the current really grounds it in the details and the feel of that specific time period.
What's interesting is that they acknowledge you might already know Arkham,
Yeah.
but then they dive into the specifics of the 1880s.
Okay.
You've got slower communication with letters and the telegraph, which is just starting to be used.
Yeah.
Limited technology like gas lamps and early medicine, and the huge influence of class and power structures.
Yeah.
All of that comes together to make a really distinct and atmospheric setting.
Yeah.
It's not just some generically spooky town.
Right.
It's a town shaped by the realities of that specific time.
Totally. And it seems like there's this fascinating mix of new science and old folklore and superstitions.
Right. They show how scientific progress is growing at the same time that people still believe in spiritualism, omens, and ancient curses.
Yeah.
The church is still powerful, and there's a lot of knowledge that's passed down through stories and local customs.
Yeah.
So it's not a world where science has all the answers.
Right.
There's plenty of room for things that can't be explained and for older, more mystical ways of understanding the world.
And it sounds like they actually want you to personalize this version of Arkham.
Yeah.
To build on what's already there, make it your own.
Yeah. The material encourages you to do that.
Okay.
They suggest adding things like local newspapers, besides the famous Arkham Gazette, creating your own secret societies that operate in the city,
Right.
and even coming up with rival factions that are fighting for power.
Okay.
It's all about making Arkham feel like a real place
Yeah.
that's specific to your group's stories and experiences.
Right.
So you can really get immersed in the game.
Okay, so now let's talk about the different factions and notable figures in the rulebook.
Okay.
They each have their own goals and connections to the current, and they sound really intriguing.
Mhm.
Let's start with the Gentleman's Agreement. They sound like a very British, very secretive organization.
They are. They're like this shadowy part of the British Empire that works in total secrecy.
Okay.
And their focus isn't really on understanding the supernatural stuff in the current.
Right.
They want to control it to give the Empire more power.
Okay.
They have a very organized structure.
Okay.
It goes from this mysterious directorate in London down to their agents in the field.
Right.
Like keepers who watch over dangerous things.
Okay.
Watchers who are secretly placed within different organizations. And talons who do the risky jobs of getting and neutralizing stuff.
Okay.
Their main goal is to control everything.
Okay.
They want to get dangerous artifacts and forbidden knowledge, stop any supernatural threats, and make sure the current stays hidden so it doesn't mess up the Empire's power.
Wow.
They're all about being practical and using power to deal with the unknown.
And they have a presence in Arkham, even if they're working mostly in the shadows.
Right. The rulebook hints at some of their agents who might be active in Arkham,
Okay.
like Sir Edwin Harrow at Miskatonic University, who's keeping an eye on all the occult research.
Right.
Or Captain Jonathan Wexley, a Talon who's haunted by what happened on a past expedition that went wrong.
Okay.
There's also Lady Eleanor Ashcombe, a rich widow who's secretly funding the purchase of powerful artifacts.
Wow.
And Dr. Percival Locke, a surgeon who's into the occult and helps them out in exchange for access to forbidden knowledge.
Okay.
They don't really make alliances. They're just focused on keeping and expanding their control.
Okay, then there's Lorraine Noir, the matriarch of the Black Coast.
Yeah.
She sounds like a huge figure in Arkham's criminal underworld.
She's presented as the secret ruler of Arkham's underbelly.
Right.
And she's gained a lot of power and wealth, not through force, but by knowing things and knowing how to use them against people.
Right.
What's interesting is she doesn't actually believe in the current herself,
Okay.
but she makes a lot of money from those who do.
Right.
She basically bankrolls supernatural dealings.
Yeah.
For her, everything has a price, loyalty, fear, even secret knowledge.
Wow.
Her influence is quiet, but it's absolute.
Right.
And if you cross her, you usually disappear.
Yikes.
She's a master manipulator working outside the normal power structures.
And the rulebook gives some really interesting quotes from her that show how practical and kind of cynical she is.
Yeah, like the world doesn't remember orphans. It remembers those who buy it.
Right.
Or her take on the current, men fear what they don't understand. I fear only what I cannot control. She's a fascinating character. Not really a villain or a hero, but someone who's survived by understanding people in this supernatural world.
Okay, next we have Commander Alistair Graham. He sounds like a man who's seen some things, especially in the Arctic.
Yeah, he's been shaped by war and the brutal cold of the Arctic.
Okay.
Graham knows about the current firsthand.
Okay.
He led an expedition to find the lost Franklin expedition, but he found something way more profound and disturbing.
Okay.
And he came back changed. He's practical, careful, and really stoic in the face of horror.
Okay.
He doesn't talk much, and for him, survival isn't luck, it's a skill.
Right.
There's a big mystery around what happened to him in the Arctic.
Okay.
And now he operates in the shadows, maybe working with a faction that understands the true nature of the supernatural.
And he has some pretty chilling quotes that hint at how vast and uncaring these unknown forces are.
Yeah, like, there are things older than nations, older than kings, and older than gods.
Right.
Or his warning about what he found. You want to know what I found? You wouldn't survive knowing.
Wow.
He could be an ally, an enemy, or something else entirely.
Yeah.
He always seems to know more than he lets on.
Yeah. And then there's Jae-sun Jack Hyon,
Yeah.
who has a different background coming from Korea and having experience with Japan's supernatural bureaucracy.
Yeah, he's a really interesting character, a survivor who knows how to navigate different cultures.
Okay.
He used to be part of Japan's Bureau of Onyu,
Right.
the agency that dealt with supernatural stuff until it was shut down.
Okay.
So he escaped to America, and now he's trying to make sense of this new world.
Right.
He understands the unseen in a way that Westerners often miss or ignore.
Right.
He's cautious, adaptable, and really good at disappearing when he needs to.
Wow.
He's attuned to the element of air. He values knowledge, but he's also really careful about getting too obsessed with it.
Right.
Because he's seen what happens when you dig too deep into the unknown.
And his quotes give us a glimpse into how he sees power and what the current really is.
Yeah, he contrasts wind with other forms of power. A blade is power. A throne is power. But wind is freedom.
Oh.
And he understands that the current is unpredictable and ruthless.
Right.
You think it moves like the ocean? No. It moves like a storm, unseen, unpredictable, and merciless to those who think they can stand against it.
Wow.
He could be a valuable ally, but he's also someone who knows how to stay alive in a dangerous world.
Okay, finally we have the Widow of the Woods, a figure surrounded by local legends and connected to memory and forgetting.
Yeah, she's a powerful but solitary figure who lives on the edge of Arkham.
Right.
She's deeply connected to the local river and the land itself.
Okay.
She offers healing and wisdom to those who seek her out.
Right.
But she also understands that some things need to be forgotten.
Okay.
She's kind to children, but she's fierce to those who harm her domain.
Okay.
She doesn't try to control things, but she has power through her connection to memory and the land.
Right.
She represents a different kind of authority based on ancient wisdom and the balance between remembering and forgetting.
And her quotes are really powerful. They speak to the heart of memory and what the current is all about.
Yeah, her words have this weight to them. Like, she understands the human condition and the influence of the supernatural.
Right.
Some things must be remembered. Some things must be forgotten. You came here to ask which one you are.
Wow.
And her view on how to deal with the current is really insightful.
Right.
You are not meant to hold it. You are meant to let it pass through you. If you do not, it will take something from you in return.
Powerful stuff.
She represents a power that's not about control, but about understanding the natural flow of things.
Okay, so moving on from these main characters, the rule book also has some deeper lore in a section called Legends and Whispers.
Right.
The Ashen Tree sounds like a place with a lot of dark history soaked into it.
It does. The story of this old hanging tree that got struck by lightning during an act of vigilante justice,
Right.
it makes you think there's something supernatural still there.
Right.
Like, the land itself absorbed the violence and injustice that happened. It's a symbol of a place marked by tragedy, and its influence won't go away.
And the orchard at Bitter Hollow paints this vivid picture of a place where the very ground is tainted by the supernatural.
Yeah, this former prison camp that was turned into an orchard by Jeremiah Clay.
Okay.
The fruit grown there carries a bit of the current from the cursed soil.
Right.
It really brings up themes of moral gray areas and what it costs to try and contain these forces.
Right.
Clay and his workers are trying to stop something worse from happening,
Right.
but they're paying a high personal price.
Wow.
It blurs the line between being a savior and something much more complex and unsettling.
So to give people an idea of what it's actually like to play the current, the rulebook has a section called Adventure Ideas.
Yeah.
These don't sound like your typical monster hunting missions, do they?
No, they really focus on mystery and investigation.
Right, like the ghostly ledger
Mhm.
with its impossible financial records.
Right.
The man who wasn't there, who
Yeah.
seems to be in multiple places at once. A door that shouldn't be,
Yeah.
that leads to places that shouldn't exist.
Right.
And the house that wasn't there yesterday.
Yeah.
They're all about strange events that
Right.
you need more than just fighting skills to figure out.
Yeah, they encourage you to use your brains and investigate the world.
Okay, so lastly we have the Black Tide Scroll, which sounds like a ready-to-go storyline full of potential conflict and mystery.
It's a great example of a tangible mystery.
Right.
You've got these indecipherable Japanese manuscripts found in the archives of Arkham University.
Okay.
The translator who was supposed to figure them out disappears suddenly.
Wow.
And the scroll itself is creepy. The ink moves around and gives people bad dreams.
Right.
It's immediately intriguing.
Totally.
And then you add the different factions who want the scroll.
Right.
Grandmother's house wants to bury its secrets.
Okay.
And the Anu remnants are desperate to either get it back or destroy it.
Right.
So you've got instant conflict and a story that's ready to go.
And this section lays out how those encounters could escalate.
Yeah.
From the initial discovery at the university to tense standoffs and even a terrifying black tide catastrophe.
Right. The rulebook has these well-organized tables that show how factions might react to what the players do.
Okay.
What supernatural stuff might happen because of the scroll.
Okay.
Things that could make the story move forward.
Right.
Potential disasters if the scroll's power gets loose.
Right.
And even suggestions for what skills the players could use.
Right.
It really shows how deep and flexible the game is for this scenario.
Totally.
There's even a first touch of the current prompt table to help players imagine how their characters might first experience the scroll's power.
Yeah.
And the excerpts from the scroll itself talk about a great black wound in reality
Right.
and a churning flood of unnatural hue.
Uh-huh.
It makes the scroll seem really ominous and powerful.
Yeah. And to wrap things up, the rulebook has this collection of words of the wise and fools from all sorts of people in this world.
Yeah.
They really sum up the main themes of the game.
They do. These quotes come from everyone you can imagine.
Suspected witches, disillusioned academics, excommunicated priests, weathered steamboat pilots.
Right.
And they give you these glimpses into how raw and untamed the world is.
Yeah.
How unknowable the current really is.
Right.
The price you pay for seeking power.
Right.
And the idea that you can't control the current, you just have to try and survive it.
Right. And there's that letter from the battlefield nurse that's really powerful.
Yeah.
It talks about how she tried to use the current to control life and death and what it cost her.
It really reinforces that theme of consequence that runs through the whole game.
So to wrap up this deep dive into the current, it's clear that this game offers a really different and compelling take on cosmic horror.
Yeah.
It's not just about going mad. It's about how encountering the unknown can change you in profound and often unsettling ways.
Absolutely.
The way you change through weathering,
Right.
the price you pay for knowledge,
Yeah.
the focus on telling the story together with a facilitator,
Right.
the super detailed setting of 1880s Arkham.
And all the intricate factions and mysteries. They all come together to make a truly unique and thought-provoking gaming experience. So for those of you listening, what parts of the current really stood out to you?
Yeah.
What kind of character would you create in this world?
Yeah.
What faction caught your attention?
Yeah.
And what secrets in Arkham would you try to uncover, even knowing it might cost you something?
If this glimpse into the current has sparked your interest, definitely check it out.
Yeah.
Read some reviews, watch some people play it online, or even get the rule book yourself.
Right.
It seems like a game that rewards curiosity and a willingness to face the wonders and dangers of the unknown.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this thought.
Okay.
It echoes a basic truth from the game.
Okay.
The current is always flowing, always waiting.
Yeah.
The question is, are you ready to be changed by it?
Yeah.
Or, maybe more accurately, remember this, in the world of the current, you don't control it. You survive it. Until next time, stay curious.